Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I'm Stephanie Ramos. We have a lot to get to today. We were just days away from another possible government shutdown, but that may have been averted. We'll take you to Washington for the details on this border deal. Also here in New York City, drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman has been found guilty on all charges. We'll get the details on that. He's facing life in prison. And we'll also take you to Denver, where the latest teacher strike is happening right now. Teachers demanding more pay. We'll have all of those stories and more. But first, here are your headlines.
Cunningham over goal wire. Zion Williamson pulls it away, and the Blue Devils with a comeback for the ages.
Duke came back from a 23-point deficit last night to pull off a dramatic win over Louisville. The final score was 71-69.
A lawyer for rapper 21 Savage says he's been granted bond for release from federal immigration custody soon. ICE arrested the British-born artist February 3rd in a targeted immigration operation.
Are you feeling the love? In what's become an annual tradition at a San Francisco aquarium, biologists have handed out red felt hearts to African penguins. The birds use the hearts in their nests with their mates.
What a cute story. That's coming up. But first, we want to start in Washington. There is some optimism in Washington that a government shutdown may have been averted. A deal has been worked out by congressional negotiators from both parties, but will the president sign off on it? ABC's Karen Travers is at the White House. Mary Alice Parks is on Capitol Hill. We're all breaking it down this morning for you. Karen, I want to start with you. The president, of course, insisted on $5.7 billion for the border wall. Didn't get it. We went into the longest shutdown in U.S. history. But Karen, isn't the deal that's being proposed right now similar to what he turned down back in December?
Similar, and actually a little less than what was on the table back in December, Stephanie. The president rejected that bipartisan compromise that had been agreed to in the Senate, holding out for more money. That, of course, triggered the shutdown. And now what the president is looking at is an offer of $1.375 billion, which would put about 55 miles of new border fencing structure along the U.S.-Mexico border. The White House right now is not saying if the president is going to sign this legislation, assuming it passes the House and Senate and gets to his desk. The White House says they're waiting to see what the final agreement looks like. Last night, Stephanie, the president tweeted late that he was looking over some of the nuts and bolts of the deal, but for now, he's not saying yes, but he's also not saying no. And it was notable yesterday that the president did not threaten another government shutdown, didn't threaten a veto. He also said he didn't expect that there would be a shutdown at the end of the week. So put all of that together, a lot of tea leaves, and it certainly looks like he would begrudgingly sign on to this. But Stephanie, I think we can perhaps expect over the next 2 to 3 days a lot of drama in Washington until this all gets settled.
Drama in Washington? What?
I know.
What? That exists? Karen, thank you so much. And of course, that's probably welcome news for federal workers who were out of work for those 35 days when we were in that shutdown. Now, Mary Alice Parks, what are you hearing on the Hill about a possible vote on this deal?
Well, as Karen alluded to, we don't have an actual bill yet, no legislative text. But we're expecting that some point today, maybe this evening, the House Rules Committee will meet overnight, and the House will vote first, probably as early as tomorrow. Obviously, the House is controlled by Democrats, and it's expected to pass over there. Even some more progressive members of the caucus have signaled that they feel good this bill will keep the president from being able to build his wall. They're expecting very specific language saying that this can't be used on an actual concrete structure, but just fencing. So assuming that it passes in the House, it will move over to the Senate, where I currently am, and where Mitch McConnell seemed to say yesterday that as far as he's concerned, this is the deal. He was asked if the president should sign it and if they could expect the president would use any extra funding to supplement construction on the southern border. Let's take a listen to what McConnell had to say yesterday.
Well, first of all, I hope he signs the bill. And second, I think he ought to feel free to use whatever tools he can legally use to enhance his effort to secure the border. So no, I would not be troubled by that.
So McConnell, they are seeming to recognize that the president might still declare a national emergency or use some other kind of executive action to build something on the border. He seemed to punt that idea right back to the White House, though. There are some Republicans here in the Senate who have really cautioned the White House against taking that route, but basically acknowledged it might not be up to them at that point.
And Mary Alice, you bring up a good point. The president declaring or threatening to declare a national emergency. I want to bring Karen back in here. Karen, for a good chunk of time, we heard the president talk about possibly declaring a national emergency. Didn't hear much about it during the State of the Union. Have you heard anything else from the president, from his administration, about that still being on the table?
Well, I think the insistence from the president yesterday and again today from White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders that the president is going to build this border wall, no matter how he has to get it done. What they're looking at now is separate from a national emergency, looking at executive action where the president could find some pots of money, shift things around. It'd been allocated for one thing, put it to something else. White House officials say that they've identified perhaps $3 billion that they could put toward that. What they're looking to try and do, of course, is make up that difference. The numbers we're hearing, $1.4 billion in this Senate and House agreement. The president wanted $5.7 billion. They'd like to see if they can make up that several $billion-dollar difference any way they can.
All right, Karen, thank you very much for that. Karen Travers at the White House, Mary Alice Parks on Capitol Hill. Thank you so much to you both. Now, we want to turn to Denver. Teachers are on strike there demanding for more money. They say they just can't survive on their teacher's salary. Now, these are images from that strike taking place in Denver. Very similar. We've seen this now for the last couple of months, other teacher strikes across the country. We want to check in with Micah Smith with KMGH in Denver. Micah, teachers are on strike, but schools are still open, right?
Schools are still open. Students are in class, but right now the majority of their teachers, 86%, are at a picketing site like this one. It's pretty rowdy out here. Lots of enthusiasm in the air. I'm seeing teachers out here that I've seen since day one. Many of them have smiles on their faces, and I have a feeling that's because of the progress that happened at the negotiation table yesterday. That session lasted for about 12 hours, and in the end, both sides said for the first time in a very long time, they finally see a path forward to ending this strike.
So they had discussions yesterday. They do see that path forward, but any inclination as to which way they'll go on this? We know that teachers just went on strike there. Any idea if this is going to go on for days, weeks?
I think it's close to ending here pretty soon. You've heard the saying, money talks. It seems like Denver Public Schools and the teachers union are finally speaking the same language. They've agreed on a base salary for teachers that would be $45,800 a year. They've also agreed to certain details of a compensation schedule, which teachers say will be a lot easier for them to increase their salary. So they still need to iron out a few details, but they are very close to making a deal.
Well, that's great to hear. And as we mentioned earlier, the schools are open, so a lot of substitute teachers getting some time in there. But any idea of what the classroom in these schools are like right now with all of these teachers on strike?
I wanted to go show it to them. We are hearing from Denver Public Schools that they have plenty of subs in the schools to go ahead and keep school open. However, they've had to double, sometimes quadruple class sizes. So many of these students are learning in gymnasiums, cafeterias, and other large spaces. Teachers here say that is no way to learn, and the district agrees this is not sustainable long term. So a lot riding on today's negotiation session. They're hoping they won't have to do that much longer.
All right, Micah Smith there in Denver for us. Thank you so much for that update. Well, here in New York City, drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman has been found guilty on all charges, 10 charges here in New York City. A jury finding him responsible for violence, including murders, as well as the smuggling of massive amounts of narcotics. ABC's Gio Benitez is right outside the court.
Hey there, Devin. We are outside that correctional facility where El Chapo is being held right now. That's happening right there here in downtown Manhattan. Now, this was a wild trial. We're talking about more than 50 witnesses against El Chapo. He only had one. This jury took 6 days to deliberate because there were a lot of charges that they were looking at, and they were looking at this and saying, well, wait a minute, we have a few questions about some of these charges. We want to hear some of this evidence again. They went back to the judge. That's why that was taking so long for them to reach a verdict. But boy, when they did, their message was clear. El Chapo Guzman, guilty on all counts. We are talking about federal charges from conspiracy to murder to this drug trafficking. And that is what he is, of course, so famous for, because still his Sinaloa cartel is so powerful. It continues to traffic those drugs. We're talking about 20% of the market still operated by the Sinaloa cartel. It is not over just yet. But overnight, we heard Senator Ted Cruz of Texas saying that he believes that any seized assets should be used to build that border wall. So perhaps a new debate forming there.
Gio, thank you very much. To Venezuela now, opposition leader Juan Guaido promising to deliver humanitarian aid to the country. That's something that's been blocked by President Nicolas Maduro. For more, we have Cody Weddle, who is in Caracas, and Bruno Rober on the Colombia-Venezuela border. Bruno, let's start with you. Set the scene for us. What is the latest there on the ground?
Well, as no doubt Cody will talk a little bit more about, what we heard yesterday was that Juan Guaido has announced sort of aid day is the 23rd of February, when aid that's being stored on this side of the border, we're just in Colombia and Venezuela is just over there, is going to be taken across and distributed to the people. Quite how that's going to happen, it's not sure, because at the moment the bridge is blocked. But let me explain a little bit about where we are and show why the aid is so desperately needed. I mean, these are hordes of Venezuelans who've crossed over to Colombia. They're coming back, and you can see they're carrying shopping goods, loo paper, eggs, young children. The most basic amenities are just simply not available in Venezuela. So even diapers, for paracetamol, ibuprofen, just basic painkillers, things we take for granted, not available. Let's just take a walk. So, I mean, look at this. Thousands of people cross every day just to do shopping. Many of the people who've crossed actually have walked for days on foot, hundreds of miles just to cross over, just to get basic amenities. As you can see, I mean, it's a scene of fairly chaotic scene here. But what is really sad is that you'll get around here, you have pawn shops. I'm not sure if you can hear me okay. Hopefully you can. There are pawn shops here because people bring precious items, watches, jewelry, even their wedding ring to sell. And creepily, what we've noticed coming up and down here, people are actually shouting out for hair. So women, young girls come here and actually sell their hair in order to get money. That's how desperate they are.
And Bruno, definitely a busy area there right now. What is the mood like? We saw that mom walking with her baby. We see a lot of people in that area walking, passing through. What is the mood like?
Well, that's a good question. And actually, I think the mood is really quite angry. I think a lot of people here we've spoken to about the aid are puzzled about why the aid isn't being taken across immediately as there's such desperate need. And they do, I mean, based on what the people we spoke to here, blame Nicolas Maduro for that. They're saying that he is blocking aid that should be taken to the people where it's desperately needed.
All right, Bruno, thank you very much. Let's bring in Cody Weddle, who is in Caracas. Cody, tell us what's happening there on the ground. We know there was a big rally for the opposition yesterday. What are you seeing?
That's right. We once again saw tens of thousands of people in the street to see Juan Guaido address the crowd and announce his plans for the coming day. And that's when he said, as Bruno said, on February 23rd, that is when humanitarian aid will enter the country here. But what he didn't specify is exactly how he's going to make that happen. We know there have been some talks about how this possibly could happen within his circle. One of the options would be some type of river of Venezuelans, river of individuals crossing the border and bringing back that aid individually. We know Juan Guaido has been collecting signatures of people who are willing to at least help make that happen. But it's also difficult to see how that would happen because this is an isolated area of Venezuela, especially on the Venezuelan side. We know the armed forces would probably prevent that from happening. And we also know that it would be difficult to make that arrive to the entire population if it's just individuals bringing the aid across the border. Another option, of course, would be military force. That's what everybody here is talking about today. Will the U.S. and perhaps Colombia as well invoke what the U.S. has consistently said is that all options are on the table. So will the U.S. invoke that ultimate option of using military force to get that aid into the country? That might happen on February 23rd if Juan Guaidó says that aid is coming in no matter what. Meanwhile, on the other side, we saw the government here yesterday, the vice president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez. She's still trying to explain to Venezuelans why they're not allowing that aid in. She actually went as far to say that it was poison, that it was that it contained biological arms. She did not provide any proof of that.
All right, Cody, well, let's see if Guaidó can live up to that promise. Thank you so much for being with us and breaking that down for us. All right, back here in the States, we want to take you to Florida, where a monkey that had been stolen is now safe and sound and back home. ABC's Victor Oquendo has that story.
Stephanie, this is the outcome everyone was hoping for. Callie, the rare 12-year-old Geldes monkey, safe and sound, returned right here to the zoo. She's now at the zoo hospital. We just saw her for the first time. Take a look. She's with her handlers there. She's inside that cage. Apparently, when she was brought in, she was a little dehydrated, but now she's drinking water. She's eating grapes as well as some other fruits and worms. Those are apparently her favorite. There was an urgent search for the person seen in this surveillance video breaking into the Palm Beach Zoo early Monday morning, stealing Callie, that 12-year-old Geldes monkey, likely worth more than $10,000 on the black market. Zoo officials say the suspect broke in from behind the monkey's enclosure when the zoo was closed. Callie weighs just 1 pound. She requires a special diet and anti-inflammatory medication. Her handlers say there's a chance we could have lost her. Now, this is not the first time the Palm Beach Zoo or even the species has been targeted. 10 years ago, other Geldes monkeys and animals were stolen, all eventually returned unharmed. We're still waiting for more details from police. In the meantime, her handlers will be keeping a close eye on her, and she will likely be reunited with her mate in 4 to 5 days. Stephanie?
So glad Callie is back safe and sound. Victor, thank you so much for that. Well, across the country, we are seeing some wild winter weather. Let's check in with ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Z.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you. How about we go ahead and start with the so much winter. And so much winter anywhere from Michigan, where we're hearing that schools have now entered their 20th snow or cold day off this year, back to Wisconsin and even Massachusetts, which with this latest storm had so many slide-offs and accidents, and they still had plows on the road as of Wednesday morning. Most of the frozen precipitation will have moved on, but gosh, Wisconsin, up to 19 inches of fresh snow fell. This is after being buried. Eau Claire, Wisconsin now has had their snowiest February on record. So a lot of people saying good riddance, at least to this storm, but behind it will be winds up to 50 miles per hour. So I think those wind advisories, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, down into western North Carolina, something to note today, and it may even impact flights in these areas, so keep an eye on that. Go west, and you know there's been a lot of snow. 446 inches, actually, at Mammoth Mountain. That ends up being their most to date, and they say that they'll be open until at least July 4th. Also, there's more to come, so Snoqualmie Pass, look at this, 53 inches of snow in just 48 hours. Can you imagine, chest deep? Well, it's going to be even deeper. Look at this. So many storms slamming the west. In the next couple of days, we put the time on here. This goes through Friday. You could end up seeing not just snow in the Sierra, up to 100 inches, but north of the San Francisco Bay Area, there are regions that will end up with a half a foot of rain or more. Go south to the Mexican border, and San Diego, the weather service there is saying this could be their biggest storm, and that could be a big problem, especially when it comes to burn scar and mudslide. Go to then the Sierra, remember we said locally 100 inches. Just wanted to point that out. It's not just there. You go into the Rockies and you're going to end up getting some significant snow too. So what a great year for a lot of the ski resorts. And in Hawaii, they do get snow on Maui, not as often as the Big Island, but Maui now, this could end up being their lowest elevation they've seen snow at. So no one is safe unless you're in Florida. Stephanie.
So much snow. A ski resort open till July 4th. That's incredible. All right, well, that'll do it for us here at The Debrief. Thank you for watching. I'm Stephanie Ramos. And don't forget, you can watch our political show, The Briefing Room, at 3:30, and also check out World News Prime at 8 o'clock. And of course, remember to download the ABC News app. But before we go, we want to leave you with this amazing video of a World War II aircraft carrier discovered completely intact on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. Take a look.